Hi, I'm Carly Levine with the Legal Tech Fund. Welcome back to Legal Tech Briefs. Today we have Taylor Bell from ABS Law. Taylor is also an advisor on the TLTF Summit. We're excited to have him and his advice on board. Taylor, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, excited to be here.
This is a topic that keeps coming up with our portfolio companies, with our partners, with law firms. So I am looking forward to digging in. You are an expert on what is happening in Arizona. And one thing that I keep coming back to is it's not one way or the highway. There are lots of different flavors of this. So looking forward to learning more from you.
Yeah.
Before we get into what's happening in Arizona and ABS law, I really enjoyed your recent piece on your personal introduction with 9 things about you, and I recommend everyone who's listening check it out on LinkedIn. What was the one item that readers were most surprised by?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was a fun one. Probably the personal anecdotes. I mean, LinkedIn is oftentimes it's a professional platform, and so usually my content is kind of around what I do, and so every once in a while I try to kind of crack the door open and let people know a bit about who I am. And so there was a nugget in there about when I was prepping for the bar exam, and my wife was very pregnant, and the deal that we struck on if she went into labor while I was in the middle of the 2 day bar exam, what we would do. That one, I think, hit a note for especially a lot of attorneys thinking back to when they were taking the bar exam and the stress, just the general stress of that, and then adding in the pregnancy at the same time it was a lot.
I'm married to a lawyer, and it was a very memorable few days when he took the bar. So I,
Yeah,
I get it, and that adds a whole nother layer.
yeah, yep.
How did you end up in your current role today? What was your path to get there?
Yeah, I sort of fell into it. I mean, I have the fortune of living in Arizona, where as a state, we decided to go into this ABS world and try to bring innovation into the legal field. And I live here and I'm licensed here, so that was great. Prior to that, I did mostly HR and employment law, and a lot of compliance around that. And so it was a pretty natural transition from employment law and the compliance requirements and training and that sort of thing into ABS because it has a similar flavor to it. And the more I got into it, the more I enjoyed it. I love being part of the kind of the future of the law and where things are going. And so I took the bull by the horns and just kept going.
Great. You're spending so much time thinking about the ABS space, the MSO structure space. One thing I like to ask everyone is if you could start, if you're talking to someone who's new to the space, what's one misconception you want to address head on right up front?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. One that ABS is generally bad. I mean, a lot of lawyers don't like it. They think that it's giving control over to non-lawyers of the law firm, and you're hearing that a lot with MSOs as well. I push back pretty hard on that in both arenas because the whole framework is designed so that the lawyers stay in control of the legal work. And so, if it's someone who's sort of skeptical of these types of setups, that's usually the first thing. For folks that are interested in it, a lot of times they come at it thinking the MSO route is the less risky. And I generally think that's not the case. I think that the ABS framework is less risky. MSO just isn't regulated right now. And so it's simpler. But at some point, I have a feeling the framework's going to change around the country, similar to how it's changing with ABS. And so I would say pro ABS MSO folks, they think MSO is the safer bet. And I'm not so certain that's the truth.
So given your vantage point in Arizona, what drove Arizona to think differently about lawyer ownership? What was happening in the state that made it possible there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Arizona has a large population and very few lawyers. So I just saw a statistic that Arizona has like the fourth fewest lawyers per capita in the country. And I think that was one of the biggest pieces to it. There are a lot of folks in Arizona that don't have access to legal representation. Most of the lawyers are condensed in the Phoenix metro area, but there's a lot of folks that live outside of it. And so the Supreme Court was trying to figure out ways to drive more access, drive innovation, and see if we could help improve those numbers. And I think that we have. It's a slow process, but the ABS is just a part of it. But that's what really kind of spurned the whole thing. That and just seeing, that the legal field was ripe for some innovation and pushing some boundaries. And we had a Chief Justice and a Supreme Court that had the guts to kind of decide to make a change.
I recently learned the term legal desert, so it sounds like you were
We're a
literally,
physical and legal desert, yes.
yes. You've said that 1 in 3 people who reaches out to you doesn't actually need an ABS. How do you think about that? What, for our listeners who might be thinking about this, what's the checklist that they should go through when they think about whether it's an appropriate structure?
Sure. So a lot of folks that reach out to me about ABS are lawyers themselves. The primary reason for setting up an ABS would likely be because they want to have non-lawyer ownership. And so if your entire ownership group is lawyers, you don't need to go through the headache of creating an ABS. It's a time-consuming process. It's not cheap. And then you have all the compliance pieces that go along with it, the guardrails that are there for non-lawyer ownership. And so if you're a lawyer, there are certainly ways to accomplish growth and expansion and those types of things without going the ABS route. So that's probably one of the primary ones. And then also, oftentimes an MSO is a simpler way to achieve certain goals. And so if that's an option for them, the ABS doesn't necessarily have to be something they do. Although I'm seeing a lot of folks kind of work in tandem now, creating an ABS and also an MSO to work with it. And so it really just depends on what their goals are and making sure that they're not jumping into something that's pretty complicated if they don't have to.
Let me ask further. What scenarios are driving people to do both ABS and MSO alongside each other?
Sure. So in the ABS framework, like take a legal tech company, for example, that wants to, they have a great technology that they also could pair with providing legal services directly. ABS is the way to do that, most likely because you can actually practice law through the legal tech company. So the non-lawyer owners, the venture funds, whatever, whoever's behind it can own the law firm. They can't control the legal work, but they can own the law firm. An MSO doesn't do that. You control the back office. You can't control the law firm itself. And so if they're wanting to do that, that's the way to do it. Have the ABS, but then the MSO can help you when you're looking at potentially working outside of Arizona, partnering with other firms, partnering with other groups. The MSO model is proven out. There's several states that have put a rubber stamp on it saying that's okay. And so it makes sense in some instances to pair the ABS ownership with also an MSO that can help them expand.
Great. When you're sitting across from founders or investors or law firms and they are just getting started on the ABS process in Arizona, what
Mm-hmm.
is the thing that they underestimate? I have a hypothesis, but I'll hear from you.
There's probably two pieces to it. One is just the length of time it takes. Founders like to move fast. The tech world likes to move fast, and courts don't work very quickly. The Arizona Supreme Court and the staff that are connected to the ABS committee are very diligent and they are working hard, but they're understaffed and there's a lot of interest. And so it just takes a long time. Right now, it's 7 to 9 months from submitting an application to when you'd have your committee hearing. And that's like 10 years in Silicon Valley. So that's probably one. And then the other is just the compliance piece. Running a tech firm is not the same as running a law firm. Law firms have a lot of rules around them, whether they're traditional or ABS, around advertising, around communications, around accounting. All those pieces really dramatically change when you turn into a law firm.
I was going to go on timing. Is
Timing,
the
yeah.
I was going to go on timings. Uh, what is the timing? I understand all of those rationale that courts are not startups, they're not a committee. They're a more formal committee who have to approve this. Are there plans in place to change that, to change the timing, or do you think it will be the same going forward?
Yeah, I think that they're trying. So, should have mentioned up front that I'm a member of the Arizona ABS committee here. So, I'm a volunteer that helps review ABS applications, make recommendations to the Supreme Court. And so I get to work with the staff. And I know that they just hired one person. They're looking to potentially hire some additional staff. They're putting in some new software over the next few months that should hopefully speed things up. But at the end of the day, it's how many applications are there? There's a lot. How many people are there to review them? Not that many, and they do a really thorough job because it's important. And so they're not cutting corners, and it just takes a while.
Yeah. Let us know if we can help on the software front.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could help find solutions. When you're looking at the applications, are there themes you're starting to see? Are there trends you're starting to see emerge, or have those trends changed over time of who's applying?
I think it's changed over time for sure. The types of firms that are typically coming before us now are there's a lot more innovation, a lot more people trying to do interesting things as opposed to just um, do things kind of a traditional way with non-traditional owners. And so that's been exciting. The rules have changed some, or at least clarified over the past 6 months as well, which I think is going to start driving even more change. You're going to see less focus on um, firms that are mostly there to market and bring in clients and then refer them out. And I think see more people that are actually trying to practice law to do things that increase access to legal services and or do it with innovation as a backbone.
And I believe I saw in some of your writing that there's more of an emphasis now on impact to Arizona. What does that look
Yeah, hard to say what it's going to look like. That was from March. There's now a clarification and specific rule that these ABS firms have to at least in part impact the state of Arizona. The Chief Justice, I think, would argue that that was always a rule, but now it's like clearly written down. That could be, how many clients are you serving? How many attorneys have you hired and are part of your firm? Those are two big things that they're trying to impact. I think it can also be positive impacts outside of just those two numbers. You see ABS firms now starting to partner with nonprofits, offer a lot of pro bono services, partnering with the Bar Association's foundation to impact access to justice and legal services through those means. So it's just making sure that people keep in mind that this is an Arizona program, and it makes sense for Arizona to also benefit from the innovation.
It sounds like applicants are getting creative too, which is nice to see when they're doing their applications, and probably great for the state.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
What should other states learn from what Arizona has done, and why
Yeah,
is the piece so different elsewhere?
yeah. I hope that other states are seeing that it can be a really successful, and impactful platform, that lawyers don't have to operate in this monopoly of owning law firms for the legal practice to stay this thing that is truly a benefit to society. There's the numbers show that there's not a greater risk in having a non-lawyer owner of a ABS law firm. There's not a greater risk to the public than traditional law firms. If anything, there's less of a risk because we have these compliance guardrails that traditional firms don't have to have. And it is truly driving innovation and increased access. Like those are provable facts. And so other states, I hope, are taking a look at it and seeing that this could benefit them as well, especially states that you know are similar in legal desert type situations. Lots of states need lawyers. Lots of states have rural communities that need access, and by making it harder for people to work with ABS law firms, that doesn't benefit their population at all.
Yeah. The complaint data, I've seen it cited by all different kinds of sources on all different sides of the argument. How do you think about complaint data? How should the public be thinking about it?
Sure. I mean the data is what it is. Like I don't think all the questions are being asked, and now starting with new renewals, there's going to be more data collected. And specifically, I don't think that we've told a great story of the success stories. There is data that's public through the Bar Association on complaints, which is important. There's not a lot of data on like how much benefit this is bringing, and I think that's been a failure of the program, and we're adjusting it. And I would say that really, when I look at the data, I want to know, and I wish people would frame it as: is this a greater risk of public harm or a unique risk of public harm compared to traditional law firms? There's not much data out there on traditional law firms. Even like nobody knows how many there are, and there's not data on how many complaints come in on traditional law firms because there's no reporting requirement for traditional law firms, whereas there is for ABS. But I would argue that an ABS law firm isn't presenting a greater risk of public harm than a traditional law firm, and that should be the bellwether. It shouldn't be like, oh, there were 5 complaints. This is a terrible thing. It's like, well, how many were there of traditional law firms? Probably hundreds and hundreds. And so uh, I think it can pull both directions, and it does because there are a lot of people that are afraid of it. But at the end of the day, the data does speak for itself that it's not a greater risk. So
It sounds like you have a nice wish list, though, of additional data for the
yeah, I
coming year.
mean, data is great. It's just tough because these are also they're companies that have some of that data is proprietary. They don't necessarily want to share how many clients they have and that sort of thing. And so it's a balance. But the more times we can tell the positive side, I think the stronger the argument for the program.
You publish a lot of content. I've already cited some of it, mostly for free, in a space where people are charging for this knowledge. What's your personal philosophy?
I mean, anything I write, like my Substack, obviously LinkedIn posts, I don't charge for any of that stuff. I think when I started my Substack, there was almost no information out there. Like when I wanted to get involved in ABS, there was very little public information around it. And so I feel like the more, just like I said with the data, like the more that we can talk about it and share how it functions, what the challenges are, what's working, that sort of thing, it's not a bad thing. And so if I also, my general philosophy in life is that if I can help somebody some way, I'm going to do it. And uh, if it, if I'm doing it for free, I'm doing it for free. Generally, it always ends up coming back in a positive. So, um, yeah, I'm happy to share the information if I have it.
It is very useful and very helpful.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about in the next 5 years?
I mean, continuing to see the Arizona program grow and thrive. I think that enhanced data collection is going to be a big deal, and then because of that, hopefully, seeing a few more states jump on board with this program. Probably variations of it, which is fine. Learn from what Arizona's done, tweak it for what works for your state, but I definitely think in the next 5 years, we'll probably see a couple more states add ABS as a potential option for them. We've seen it play out in Washington State. They have their own version of it. It's very different from Arizona's, but it still, allows for non-lawyer ownership. And I think we'll see some other states jump on board too, and that's exciting.
If someone wants to learn more, they can read your Substack, they can go to your LinkedIn. What other resources would you point them to in this space?
Yeah, I would say the committee website through the Arizona Supreme Court has some useful information. There's templates and that sort of thing. There's a trade association called NALFA, National ABS Law Firm Association. If you're involved in ABS, that could be a good resource, especially for community and connecting with other people running ABS law firms. It's a unique and small world, and so it's nice to be able to connect with others that are playing in this sandbox to learn what's working, what's not. Those are probably two of the biggest ones. And then, I mean, there's lots of content out there on MSO right now. That's being like taking over LinkedIn, and so plenty of resources there.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of your background and what's going on in Arizona.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the time, Carly.